Plymouth. In parallel, he also contributed to the Institute of Legal Studies at Bangalore. Known for his expertise on preventive detention matters, particularly Gunda Act and Kofeposa Act, 1974, he was a regular faculty at Karnataka Police Academy. After serving as a government pleader and as an additional government advocate for more than a decade, he was appointed as an additional judge of the Karnataka High Court on 7th February 2020, and he has been serving as a permanent judge of the High Court of Karnataka since 25th September 2021. Shri M.K. Raghavendra, Vishwa Bharati, Shantiniketan, Alliance Française de Bangalore, and the University of Hyderabad. Only yesterday, his book, Philosophical Issues in Indian Cinema, was discussed at an event at the Bangalore International Center. Diplomat with more than 3 decades of service in the Indian Foreign Service. He served as Ambassador of India to South Korea, Senegal, Mali, Mauritania, Guinea-Bissau, and Cape Verde Islands. He was also an Indian High Commissioner to the Gambia and Consul General of India in San Francisco, USA. He has served as a diplomat in Pakistan, Belgium, United Kingdom, Syria, to name a few postings. He has earlier served as an executive engineer in a PSU, holds an MBA degree, and after retirement, served as the Secretary General of the Federation of Karnataka Chambers of Commerce and Industries, and as a CEO of the Karnataka State Cricket Association. He was a regular columnist for the Vijayawani Kannada newspaper and is also author of The Reluctant Assassin, a thriller novel set in India and Pakistan, Legend of Ayodhya Princess in Korea. This is the story of a princess of Ayodhya traveling to Korea 2,000 years ago and marrying the king and setting up an empire. The book was also published in the Korean language. And Sri Ratna, Kim Suro, a children's book published by the National Book Trust. Today, as you are aware, marks the launch of Suspended Lives, a novel authored by Ambassador N. Parthasarathi. Suspended Lives is inspired by real-life incidents that the author had the opportunity to observe while serving as the Consul General of India in San Francisco. If you permit, I will now like to read a short excerpt from the book and a very intricate.
Namaskar. In fact, at the outset, I'm indebted to the Rita Parthasarathi and their family members for having invited me on this occasion. I'm a speaker on the novel Sri M.K. Raghavendra. Because I'm not like Mr. Raghavendra, I don't have such the titles what she in fact informed just before 10 minutes. And is a very versatile and erudite speaker on the film critique. Now I am connected with the book, and I honestly confess that so far I have not read any novels. Reason is quite obvious, except law books. Of course, not good on my part, though my family members, my father, brother, wife, everyone says, please read other books apart from law. But the only thing is, I don't know the reason, only Almighty knows. But dear friends, when I look at the cursory reading of this book, why thereafter I realized that why I was invited to this function. The, the theme of the book is related to the family disputes, domestic violence, adamant characters of either of the spouse in the family, complaint of the egoist way of life. Insofar as other readers are concerned, this is what I understood from the law perspective. But insofar as others are concerned, probably the pivotal role in the novel is Sheila Rao. If you remember that, one of the movies in Kannada, Chelisuva Modagalu, where the heroine's name was Sheila Rao, and the movie was based on these aspects. Family rift is there, and domestic violence. Everything will be there in that movie. Probably that what I understood after looking into the book. The title of the book is concerned. Firstly, in the book, emphasis was made on securing visa to stay at USA. Secondly, what I like in this book is the narration of problem of domestic abuse in the family, affecting their professional career. And insofar as the law students is concerned, insofar as it is the conglomeration of both municipal law and international, how they have been correlated insofar as a way of a life of a foreigner entering to the other country, and where he is under the jurisdiction of a different country, and where he got married is a different country law. How it has affected his career has been looked into. What analyzed in this book is the text and context. These are the two things. The text has been made in the context of women empowering and women concentric. So far, the book is women concentric, because recently we have celebrated Women's Day. Probably that is one of the occasions to early release of this book, and to support women who are victims of domestic violence, maybe physical and psychological abuse of women in such circumstances. I would be indeed happy if the NRI space little time to read this book, go through the intricacies in life, particularly when they got married in a country like India, where the marriage is considered to be a sacrosanct, and going abroad, and they have to live in a different law, and what are the difficulties that they have to face. Definitely this book will convey a good message to the readers. And insofar as Parthasarathi uncle is concerned, he was an ambassador, spent more than half of his life in Iraq. And in this novel, he has made a good attempt to look into the intricacies of law relating to family. Though he is not a legal practitioner, but when I was reading this book, so it was reminded me section 498 of IPC, section 4 and 5 of Domestic Violence, the Dowry Prohibition Act, section 11 and 12 of domestic violence. Everything is there, though he is not a legal practitioner. That's what I understood. Because that's the way in which, because each one of us will look at a subject in a different way. See, if I read, if I am a law student, if I read it, I will look at it in the perspective of law. Insofar as, if any, take for an example, social science student or a science student, they will look at it in a different perspective. If a literature student, if it's English literature, students will look into this, how the punctuation has been made, how the paragraph has been made. These are all the things that each one of us is having our own reflective thinking by looking into the books. So in this regard, it has come out very nicely. And one thing I would like to say, that normally the ICS personnel, those who are retired administrative persons, normally they think about the post-retirement of government assignments. However, insofar as Sri Parthasarathi is concerned, because instead of
Justice Mr. A.S. Indrish for his perspective and encouraging words. I am really overwhelmed today by the presence of so many friends, so many dignitaries. I know we can count on many of the many of the former ambassadors. We have people who have held senior positions, people who are well-known singers, people who are authors, people who are in international field and they have done so much to the society. Each one of you, but because of paucity of time and for some other reasons, I am not able to take each one's name. I hope you will excuse me today. Just about writing. I mean, I was a diplomat. I served for more than 3 decades, and that was a job which we were doing. And while I was writing some small things, etc., I had never thought of writing a novel. The whole thing came up when I was serving in Pakistan, way back 30 years back. When I was serving, in the ministry we have something called the External Publicity Division, which used to give us some booklets. They used to print booklets with pictures of the atrocities committed by the terrorists and the Pakistani instruments in Kashmir and various other places. So they used to actually take the facts and they used to print with photos and these things and give it to us so that we make publicity and give it to other diplomats and others to tell them what Pakistan is doing. So we used to take it and try to give it to the other diplomats and other people who are interested, so-called opinion makers, saying that, look, this is what your country is doing in India. But they will take it, see it, and then tell me, sir, we also get similar booklets from Pakistan saying about Indian government committing atrocities on the minority Muslims. Look at the photos, everything is there. So which one do we believe? What do we do? So then at that time I realized that the normal way of what we think is publicity is not effective. So to do that, what is the way to do it? So then that was the seed for the novel Reluctant Assassin, where there are so many families which are divided, Hindu families, Muslim families particularly. So there the mother is here doing work in some of the houses, cleaning work. The husband is in Karachi. He's a cook in a small restaurant. And this boy here, he grows up and becomes an engineer. And then how he travels to Pakistan, how he's forced to travel to Pakistan in search of his father, where he's trained as a terrorist in Afghanistan. Then what all happens is the story of that. So that, I was still the serving ambassador. It was difficult to publish the book on Pakistan, which has got terrorism, politics, everything it had. So on Kashmir and all that. But still, with the approval of the ministry, I was able to get that book published, which became quite popular. So after that, then I knew, okay, I can also publish book and start writing. And normally it so happens that many people, they write and then they become what you call the one book wonder. They write one book and that's it. So I thought maybe that should not happen, so I kept thinking. And then I was serving in the Ministry of External Affairs, and at that time, the President of Korea, one Mr. Nomuyan, he visited India. And Dr. Kalam, who was the President, he hosted a banquet in his favor. At the banquet, where I was also present, the South Korean President told our President, look, we are your son-in-laws because 2000 years back, you gave your daughter to us. So we are your close relatives. So that was an amusing thing, coming from all the way from South Korea, somebody telling we are your son-in-laws. So I was head of the administration in Delhi. I started slowly researching. And they had a legend, 1.5 pages in one of the old books, saying that a princess from India, Ayodhya, traveled to Korea, got married to a prince there, and then they started an empire called the Kaya Kingdom. Then I started slowly researching, and after a few months, it so happened, our foreign secretary suggested, and he posted me as ambassador to South Korea. So I thought it is something happened, and then when I went there, I went to the university where that kingdom is supposed to be there, Busan. If I go there, there are people who are doing research, PhDs on this Indian princess going to Korea. But if I asked them, they didn't have much details about it. They knew there was an Indian princess who came. So then I started slowly digging up things and suddenly understood it was not the Kaya kingdom, because there in that language, although incidentally I may mention that between Korean language and the Tamil language there are more than 500 words which are common. Unlike in China where they use a pictorial language, and unless in Japan where they use a pictorial language, in Korea they use a phonetic language. They call their father and mother as Appa and Amma. So there was some connection somewhere. So when I started digging up, there is no difference between Ka and Ga. So it was not a Kaya kingdom, it was a Gaya kingdom. So how does Gaya come there was an issue that came up. So then I started digging up, and then fortunately our then President Dr. Kalam also visited Korea at that time. And so once he knew that I am trying to write this book, I insisted and encouraged, no, you should do that, you must write it. So it also happened, I was able to, being the ambassador, I was able to go there, and they have a old, kind of a function even after 2000 years they do, where they dress up, one day they dress up two people like the king and the queen, princess who came from Ayodhya, and they do the whole celebration. So I was taken there, did that. So out of that, this book came out. I did the research, gave the name to that princess, and father, mother, etc., and how the education system was, Gurukula was in Ayodhya, what is the importance of Ayodhya. Fortunately, that was also published in Korean language, and then now it has almost become like, in fact, our own Prime Minister, they have sanctioned some 25 crore rupees to set up a memorial in the name of that princess in Ayodhya. So it has become like an established fact. So this is how the whole thing, being in a particular place, I realized as ambassadors, we do our job. When we do our job well, okay, you have done a very good job, but that's your job. But you have to find something else. How you can improve the relations between the two countries, particularly the relationship between people to people. You have to create a good opinion about India amongst the people where you're serving, in the country where you're serving. So I thought writing books like this is something which is very, very helpful. So after that, finally, when I came to US, San Francisco, there it so happened I was doing all of the jobs, and then suddenly I started getting a few people coming with issues of domestic violence and the emotional blackmail and the kind of trap that they were in. Because then I slowly started looking at it, and then I saw, many people go from here to the land of opportunities, as they call, seeking their fortune. They are intelligent, bright, confident, they are educated, and they have a great future here, but they think they have a much better future in America. And I'm sure that millions have gone there, they have got a great future, I'm not talking about that. But a reasonable percentage of them, one spouse goes on H1B visa, which is a work visa, but the other person goes on a H4 visa, which is issued on a humanitarian ground, so that the person is on a dependent visa with the family. They know very well they cannot work there, they cannot do any other thing. But still, anyway, we are family, we are going to earn money, they go there. There is nothing. There are millions who have gone there and they have done a good job. But many when they go there, the problem is, I'm not using husband or wife, I'm using spouse for a simple reason, because it happens in both ways. The spouse, one goes to work because he's plugging, he's working for that, and he works up to 10 o'clock, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, in particular in the digital domain. What does the wife do or the spouse do? It is not like the morning, early morning, your doodh wala will come and the newspaper wala will come, and then your kaam wali will come, and she will give you all the news of what is happening in the other houses and the surrounding areas where she is working. Or you come out and you can go and say hello, go and meet people. No, nothing. You can't even travel, you can't even go anywhere. So what do? How long can you see the TV or the internet? Then slowly, problems start. And it doesn't have to be from one side to the other side. But the sad part of it is, like what you heard about Sheila, when something happens there is no support system for them. Many times they don't even have their passports, they don't have their own money, because many of even the women who work there, their salary goes to the husband's account, because they want to buy a house, so they are all putting the money into that. So that goes into that. And secondly, the worst thing that happens in the whole thing is those who are bright, confident, courageous, and the can-do spirit they have got there, once they go there, slowly and steadily, they start losing their self-respect, self-esteem. You know, as somebody says, nobody can take away your self-esteem unless you are willing to surrender your self-esteem or give it away. But unfortunately, there are people who manipulate things in such a way, psychologically they manipulate in such a way, slowly and steadily, they keep chipping away your self-esteem. And the bright and the brilliant slowly fall into the trap and then they start believing they cannot do anything. Okay, and they have something called a no-fault divorce there. You don't have to prove anything. You just apply for it, 6 months later you can get the divorce. It's something like that. So a lot of things happen and so many things. It's just not that. Once it so happened, a CEO of a company, she's a lady CEO, not Indian, mind you. So she was considered very efficient CEO. One day she came to me, she was a friend. One day she came to me in the evening and started crying. I said, what, an American lady and so this thing, and why is she crying? So then she had become a good friend by that time. And then she told me how her husband abuses her physically, mentally, how he tortures her. You know, this is a land of what you call freedom and liberty, and everything is there, gender equality everything is there. But she had fallen into the trap and she had started believing she cannot do anything. There is no way. She had lost her self-esteem. Outside, for the public, she is somebody who is a successful CEO. But if you come back home, she is the most miserable person. Then once I started providing support to the people, you may not believe it, first of all, they didn't know that the consulates can also support in such cases. They thought, okay, they will hear, we are facing the problem, that's your personal problem. I thought, let me try to help them, and we had a few institutions, a couple of them I have mentioned in that, where the institutions were providing help to particularly Asian women who are battered, who are suffering and who are in that. So when they were doing that, I started helping them, and you may not believe, within about 1 month, once people started knowing that the Indian consulate is responsive, I started getting phone calls from India. Parents, one thing is the domestic violence, around 30% of the women, largely women, some men also, they face this domestic violence and physical violence and mental blackmail, but they don't talk about it. Even if they face that, if the girl tries to talk to the mother, they will say, if you are married, somehow please adjust, it is your responsibility to somehow go on, you have to do it. So they didn't have it. Then you will not believe the number of phone calls I started getting from India. And once we started responding to them, I think that became something like, just they needed to hear somebody, just to at least listen to them and try to say, yes, there is a way out from there, we can support you, we can help you. So then I thought that I should write this book. Most of this is based on real stories, but I cannot use the real name. So with the liberty that as a fiction writer, I can take, I modified something, embellished something, and then done. But most of it is real, what happens. And some of them are so smooth, and how for the public, they pose themselves as the most gentle souls, loving their wife or whatever it is, and they are the best human beings around, and how they manipulate psychologically to the whole thing. People used to tell, yes, what you need to do is, if you create a character, you should get into their shoes. Only thing I tried to do in this is, instead of getting into their shoes, I tried to get into their brain and see how they think, how they start manipulating to their advantage, how they kind of make somebody's self-esteem completely destroyed. But after that, I also wanted to give a message. It is not all lost. Whatever that has happened, there is a way out. You stand up for yourself and you can come out of it. And you can achieve it and you can do that. And I tried to do that, and I hope it will be well received. Thank you so much. I'll stop it.
With your purpose to serve others and to raise the collective consciousness. So it's given us all a lot to think about. Now, may I request Sri M.K. Raghvendra to say a few words about the book and lead the book discussion.
He's not been restricted by the walls of his embassy. He seems to know a lot about America. He seems to know a lot about Pakistan. I mean, you get that sense by reading his books that he knows the kind of thinking which is going on, the kind of lives which are going on. There's much more detail in his novels. I read two of them, Reluctant Fundamentalist and this one. I find them sort of very rich in the ambience of the locales and all that sort of thing. Much more than the way he described, the way he got into writing. Okay, now it's very vivid. His writing is very vivid. Now the general thrust of this discussion has been to talk about its social value of the book. I, as a critic, am not really particularly concerned with that. I look upon it as a novel. What are the strategies it is used as a novelist? How it works as a novel. I'll talk only about that. Okay. Now, the important thing is this novel is a page turner. You start reading it, you will go on reading it, and you will not put it down. And this is, I think, this is a rare quality. It has nothing to do with its social relevance. It has to do with the way of narration, how the story is being told by the author. Okay. Now, this is very unusual in Indian cinema. Let me explain how this thing works from the viewpoint of a critic. Now, there are two aspects of the narrative, that one needs to take cognizance of when you're reading a novel. Okay, one is the story and the other is the plot. Okay, these are very distinct things. The story is simply the unfolding of events from the earliest event to the last event in the novel, right? The plot is the way the actual events are reorganized and arranged. Okay, for a detective story, for instance, let's take a Sherlock Holmes story. The chronology, the story will be A is jealous of B. He plots a way of killing B. And he does something, an ingenious way of killing B, then what happens is that he has made a single mistake. At the end of it, the police come, they investigate, they can't find it. They come to Sherlock Holmes finds out, he goes and finds that clue, and then this is the way the story would go. The plot would be, the detective is sitting in his home, the police come, they are baffled, and then what happens, he goes, finds the clue, and he reconstructs the whole story. So usually in detective novel, you would have the entire story being told, at the end, when the detective assembles everybody around the dining table and then reveals this is going to happen, this happened, okay? So the plot, the way of writing detective story is to conceal, okay, elements of the story within a plot. You have to conceal it, okay? Now it is very necessary, I don't know if you read Dan Brown, okay, the thing is that every single, this Da Vinci Code, every single chapter ends with a kind of question mark. You start off, it's like this, how do you create suspense in a novel? What you do is, you have a cause. You say, for example, if something falls in novel, okay. Now if I were to drop a glass of water here, right? In real life, nothing would happen. In the novel, if I drop a glass of water, that glass of water drop will have repercussions somewhere. If a gun is shown on the screen in a movie, that gun has to be fired somewhere, sometime, okay? These are the tricks that one uses. You give a certain hint, okay? It looks innocuous, okay? It looks innocuous, it looks like real life. You say, yeah, this happens, glasses of water falls, guns are on the wall, this sort of thing happens. This is the way you would see it. But actually when you write a novel, you give a hint, okay? You give a hint, you keep something, and that hint comes when later on, and you not only give the hint, you also make it look innocuous, that it's really detailed, it doesn't really mean anything. Parthasarathi has figured out that the way is to give hints at every single stage, but at the same time conceal those hints, okay, in such a way that you are left, that finally when it comes up, say, why didn't I think about this? This is the kind of thing. So the question is, that novel keeps you moving, it keeps you going, and you keep on reading it. It's about 400-page novel. It reads, it's racy, very racy, okay? Now but here his novel is not a detective novel. It's different. It's a novel, you could say, of character in some sense. See, for example, if you look at Indian narration by and large, I think the epitome of Indian narration would be popular cinema. Now, popular cinema, when you see a man, okay, a character, you know at first glance whether he's a good man, a bad man, a cunning man, okay, a wicked man, okay, any kind of thing. For example, if a man wears spectacles, he's not likely to be a bad man in a popular film, right? It tells you that he's a scholar in some way, okay? This is like a certain kind of narration which it seems to come naturally to Indians in some way, natural kind of thing, where everything is revealed in the surface. Here it's not the case. I mean, he may be dealing with he may examine the minds of people, but he's also awake to the fact that we cannot tell what people are really like. You look at them, they look like something, nobody wants to reveal to others what he's really like inside, right? All of us conceal that. We don't want to reveal to other people because we are afraid that we will be taken advantage of. So when Ambassador Parthasarathi creates this thing of characters, he creates characters, we don't know at first glance what exactly they are up to, okay? So this I find an extremely interesting way of the fact that gradually characters develop and gradually aspects of them are revealed, and the characters are fooled into all kinds of things. It seems to be a recurring thing that people are being fooled into this, okay? So this is the basic thing. I find this entire thing more. One of the things I found about the novel is you have Indians interacting with Indians. You don't have Indians interacting with white people or Westerners. Okay. What is this thing of Indians conducting themselves outside? How is their conduct outside with their own kind? different from their conduct within India, with their friends in the society.
Yeah. In fact, there is only one character that comes handy, and then Ricky, and characters who are not Indians particularly. Typically, I think you will see when you are outside, there are two things you will notice. I mean, now things are slowly changing, but two things you will notice. If an Indian is going this way and another Indian is coming from that, so you are going on the main street, let us assume. So from here, this Indian will start gauging the other person. The other person will start gauging this person, and they will keep walking, and then when they almost approach each other, this person turns little here, and that person turns little there, and they walk. They don't say hello. But if they meet any other foreigners, they will say hello. But otherwise, they meet Indians, they don't. So I used to conduct a different experiment for them when I was in London. So I'll be going there, and I'm sure a brother from India is coming from that side. I will also go like that, and when I almost go closer, I will say, hello, how are you? The moment you say then, it's all over. But then he will be, good morning, sir, how are you, sir? And he will start off. Because, they want to establish whether the other person is higher than you or lower than you. And then you want to interact with them whether you are there. And also you will see, if you observe just your when you are abroad, you just see, watch your children, you will see quite a few things. When they come inside, they will be talking in a particular way with an accent to your parents or others. The moment they go out, their accent changes. Their behavior completely changes. And they want to be, at home you may try to use even little rude language of this or the way they talk. But the moment they go outside, they are completely kind of refined and then much more different into the whole thing. So we have ourselves. They don't immediately call the police. First, they will probably assume that that's a given. I mean, that's how things should be. My husband has the right. Or, what can I do? That kind of a thing that happens. There is some.
Form a political community with their own power relationships, from which other people outsiders are excluded, right? It's some kind of thing. Like I don't know. There's also in India. I don't know about Asians. In India, there's a sense of universal hierarchy. We have this thing, in you go to a party, okay, and a party of large number of people where you don't know each other, and most many of them, when you all
Earlier in India itself, let's say you have, in bureaucracy itself, you have a senior officer, or even in corporate works, you have a senior officer, there is a party or something, he comes for that, there are other guests who have come, he shakes hands with all others, but you don't see him shaking hand with his junior or younger officers. They don't shake hands. And this is something which you can see, you have observed. And I used to really enjoy, for example, when I was in South Korea, you go and somebody is introduced, they will introduce somebody. I mean, you don't go as an ambassador. Once you go as an ambassador, everybody will respect you, that's a separate thing. But you just go separately. And at that time, somebody else is introduced, and he will give you a card. Immediately he will give you a card. Even in a swimming pool, he will take out a card and give you. And you don't give him a card for 10 minutes.
hierarchy. This is another thing is your heroine is very intelligent, she's very accomplished in all this, but she is incapable of reading the signals, right? She doesn't read the signals. In fact, we read the signals and we see her an idiot. We feel like telling her, okay. But the point is, she doesn't read them. She keeps making mistakes and she's forgiving at every single stage. Why is that? Why have you made her like that? That is it some kind of commentary on the new Indian woman that for all their accomplishments, whatever, they're really basically tied down in some way to convention, something like that? Because it is quite the fact that she doesn't come to any kind of realization.
Sorry. It is not only that she doesn't read signals, she reads signals, but not only she doesn't understand those times the way it should be understood, she is even told that Rita keeps on telling how is her brother Madhav, how a monster he is and how he does it. And even Madhav's mother tells, you can't do that, you should not do that. But what happens is, the moment she starts taking that, she reads the signal. She's told, she knows that what he did was wrong. But she starts kind of rationalizing it, that everything happens because he loves me too much. And after all, please understand one more thing in that character when you read that book, that Madhav doesn't have any friends or anything else at all. So she tries to say, he doesn't have anything, so I also don't have anything. So he is doing everything, maybe he will become alright. See, after 2 days he comes back and becomes alright.
This thing of stories of domestic violence are other people's stories, right? They're not my stories. But at the same that entire thing of it's another world that you know it intellectually that this thing happens, but when it comes to the actual crunch, you refuse to believe that your man is like that your family is like that your situation is like that. This is also you come across in real life, that it somehow or other belongs elsewhere, it belongs on the as representation on the screen or in novels and that sort of thing. So that okay. You've also got this last question. You've got two women there. Okay, one of them is this way, the other one is the other way. They're both good friends, but they take completely different trajectories.
Yeah. In fact, I did that to show that women, they are not alike. I mean, they can be different. And while one woman is suffering and doing the whole thing, the other woman is actually dominating and doing the whole thing. And you cannot classify them as one. And a second reason why I did that was when I was in San Francisco. First, I got a representation from a small group called Rakshak. What they were doing was they were trying to save the poor husbands who were the victims of the things that have been done by a lot of women. I mean, they came a case. I'm sorry, I know it is getting late. In 4 or 5 minutes we'll finish it. But this lady, she had loved somebody who was already in America. Sometimes it is no. What happened was I had written more than half of it when I was in America. I came back, and thanks to all of you, I got into Fiki and KSC and all that. So almost about 3.5 years I didn't do anything. And then when pandemic started, while it was a problem,
about this if you run the future. But in a comprehensive way, is there any other method by which people are seeing a lot more how to redress, how to, I would say, protect themselves both to the men or women? Because I think it's happening across both these things. In your view, whilst you were there, is there anything that has actually been done to make sure that these things don't happen or you see better light on?
thank you so much. I think that's a very relevant question, and if you would appreciate, this is one such thing which could perhaps create awareness and then create possibly what can happen. But I would request you to be possible, if you read that, what happens, I'm not giving away the story, but what happens when she and Sheila and when one of our other girls, they are leaving for America. One NGO comes and gives them a pamphlet. In the pamphlet, it is clearly written that these things, kind of things are happening, so be careful and you should be prudent and you should keep your passport ready, keep some money ready. All that she will tell you in a pamphlet. But what these people do, saying that these NGOs get funding and they don't do anything. Maximum they try to harass us and they try to tell us, our husbands are so nice. So the best thing we can do with the pamphlet is, let us eat a sandwich, and after the sandwich we use it to clean our hands and throw it into the dustbin. So what happens is, till something happens to you, you don't believe it will happen to me. So it is very difficult to educate. But what we try to do is, we try to tell them that there are organizations, there is consulate and embassy. If in case of real this thing, that's also a responsibility in the embassy for us. That in case something happens, please approach us, we'll try to help you. And generally what happens, this is not necessarily a priority, it depends on the head of the mission or a head of the consulate, rather than being a policy. So, but there are some organizations, but you see what also happens is, most of the women who are suffering, they don't come out. See, talking about it itself is something. If somebody says, "Oh, my husband is beating me," then her standing becomes this thing. They suffer inside, they come out and they praise their husbands, and they are all trying to say everything is hunky-dory. It's like that. So it is very difficult thing to create awareness and to tell them that it could be you. That is the whole thing. But hopefully, I think people are now able to Google through or see the internet and see what all that happens, and then
Anticipation that he would become Chief Justice. So let's
Yes. Freudian slip. Ramya Satish.